Upbeat, slightly dramatic intro music fades. Dad's Army. When you hear those words, what comes to mind? Probably a bunch of bumbling elderly gentlemen with broomsticks, right? The classic image of Britain's Home Guard, made famous by the beloved TV show. But what if I told you that image, while funny, is a far cry from the truth? That the real Dad's Army was a highly trained, well-equipped, and formidable force of 1.7 million men, ready to be the last line of defense against a Nazi invasion. Recently, a treasure trove of historical documents nearly thrown away has come to light, and it's completely reshaping our understanding of these wartime volunteers. This is the story of Major James Webster and the papers that prove the Home Guard were no old duffers. Transition. In May 1940, with the threat of a German invasion looming over Britain, the Home Guard was formed. It was made up of men who, for various reasons, weren't eligible for regular military service, either too young, too old, or in essential reserved occupations. The popular perception, reinforced by the TV show, is that they were amateurish and ill-equipped. And in the very beginning, that wasn't entirely wrong. They were learning on the fly, making do with what they had. But that period was short-lived. Thanks to a recent discovery, we now have an unprecedented look into just how quickly they evolved. Helen Mitchell was clearing out her attic in Cornwall when she came across a box of her grandfather's old papers. Her grandfather was Major James Webster, a commanding officer for 2 Home Guard battalions in Ipswich, Suffolk. The papers were old, the roof had leaked, and Helen admits she was on the verge of simply throwing them all away. Can you imagine? Thankfully, a friend suggested she check their significance online, and that's when everything changed. She'd stumbled upon a historical goldmine. The papers were donated to the Great War Huts, a museum near Bury St. Edmunds, where military historian Taft Gillingham began to piece together the real story. What he found was astounding. This wasn't just a random collection of memos. It was a detailed archive of the life of a Home Guard battalion. We're talking training schedules, lists of recruits with their names and addresses, and even intricate plans for military exercises. Major Webster himself was a perfect example of a Home Guard member. He was the manager of an engineering company that produced crucial parts for tanks. His job was too important for him to be conscripted, so he poured his leadership skills into training the men who would defend his hometown. The documents reveal a level of professionalism that would surprise most people. These men weren't just marching around the village green. The training schedules list everything from first aid and street fighting to advanced weapons handling. One document even lays out instructions for immobilizing petrol pumps across the town in the event of an invasion, a clear strategic objective. Taft Gillingham, the historian, puts it perfectly. He says the reputation is of amateurs, but by 1943, the Home Guard were not much different from the professionals. Many were fit young men who were exempted from service because they were skilled engineers, factory workers, or farmers, the very people needed to keep the country running. These papers show them running joint exercises with the regular British Army's Suffolk Regiment, and even liaising with the British Resistance Organization, a top-secret underground network designed to wreak havoc behind enemy lines if an invasion occurred. One of the most fascinating discoveries was a hand-drawn map. It detailed a mock attack on Ipswich Airport. The plan showed troops moving from Major Webster's factory, along Nacton Road, and even cutting through someone's garden to reach their objective. This wasn't child's play. This was a serious, coordinated military drill designed to test the town's defenses. They were constantly training, constantly improving, and preparing for the worst-case scenario. Now, it wasn't all serious business. Gillingham did find one anecdote that sounds like it could have come straight from a Dad's Army script. The men were supposed to be learning how to blow up railway lines, but the local railway chief wasn't having any of it. He refused to let them disrupt his precious train schedule. So, his own railway workers set the practice charges while the Home Guard had to stand back and watch. It's a funny story, but even the historian points out that in the TV show, for all their bumbling, the characters always managed to do the sensible thing just in time. The show was cleverer than it looked, and so were the real men it was based on. Going through these documents also brought the history to life in a very personal way for Gillingham. As he was reading through the list of battalion members, a name jumped out at him: Reg Hood. Gillingham suddenly remembered that he'd bought his second-ever car, a Morris Oxford he still owns, from a man named Reg Hood back in 1985. And there he was, 40 years earlier, serving in the 11th Battalion. In another instance, he found a member's address was a house on Christchurch Street where one of his best school friends lived. He'd been in and out of that house his whole childhood, never knowing its connection to this local history. It's these threads that connect us directly to the past, turning names on a page into real people who lived and served in our own communities. So, what does this all mean? It means we need to update our view of the Home Guard. These papers from Major Webster's attic are a powerful testament to their dedication and skill. If the Germans had invaded, these men would not have been a pushover. Alongside the regular army, they would have fought fiercely for every town, every street, and every field. They were a well-trained, well-organized, and highly motivated force, ready to give a very good account of themselves. The story of Dad's Army is a wonderful piece of British culture, but the real story is one of quiet, determined heroism. It's a story of ordinary people, factory managers, engineers, shopkeepers, who stepped up in their nation's darkest hour to become an extraordinary line of defense. And it's all thanks to a leaky roof and a box of papers that were very nearly lost to history. What do you think? Does this change your perception of the Home Guard? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey into history, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more stories just like this one. See you next time.